Hi, this is a game from the Dortmund chess tournament. This is from the final round, number 7. And with the white pieces is Grandmaster Dmitri Andreikin. With the black pieces is GM Maxime Vachier Lagrave. I like this game because of the dynamic approach um, that black took in this game. Let's check it out. E4 from Andreikin. C5. Everyone in the world knows Vachier Lagrave is a Najdorf specialist in the Sicilian, and therefore Andreikin played this offbeat variation that is often seen in blitz and rapid games, but not in this type of format that often. I know Morozevich plays it, and it's playable. It gives white no more than equality, but this game um, shows the level of preparation and fierce style of play that Vachier Lagrave brings to even these obscure sidelines. In other words, this guy is prepared. So he plays G6. So right away, there's this issue over the diagonal, contesting the diagonal. All right. White gets it first. Bishop B2. So knight F6. E5. Hitting the knight, of course. Knight D5. Hopping right in the center. Knight C3. Now, Vachier Lagrave does not want to waste time, and he just captures the knight. So knight takes C3. Bishop takes C3. And now he moves his bishop to G7. H4. So Andreikin is going for broke this game, and he initiates a kingside attack. The king is not castled at this moment, but he is anticipating either that and that Vachier Lagrave is going to castle over there, and he figures he'll play H5 and just rip open the king side. In some cases, skip H5 but go to H6, and with this pawn here on E5, excuse me, this bishop will be forced to return home if he decides not to capture here on H5 and ruin this pawn structure. But Vachier Lagrave observes the tried and true principle from years ago is when faced with the attack on the wing, counterattack in the center of the board, and there it is, D5. He could care less about the move H5 because he would then play D5, D4, excuse me, just shutting out this bishop. Okay. Andreikin takes en passant. Now the bishop is on prise. Castle. And now, what do we do when we're ahead in development? Okay, as we step on it. And what's interesting, and I love that castle by Lagrave there, because not only, of course, he takes care of a specific issue in protecting the bishop on G7, but White has opened the position without being developed. So this is what Vachier Lagrave takes advantage of and exploits here. Only thing he has developed, White Andreikin, is his bishop here. So now watch what happens, and it's too late. He can't. It's too late to take this pawn back. So the position's open now. So he either has to catch up in development, or he's going to be toast, because you can't close the position and say, okay, I'll maneuver behind the lines to catch up in development. So castle, D takes E7. There's the pawn. Look at that. Not a capture with the queen, right? So that that would be too meek. Queen E7, that would just be meant by Queen E2, and then eventually this would take place. For instance, Rook E8. Okay, then White will be all right there. So not interposing with the queen, but with the rook. Okay, so now queen e2 is not going to happen. So queen f3, again with the same idea, but who in their right mind is going to let them just castle that easily? So now queen takes e7. Of course, the queen is not going to return now, because then, for instance, that would just be a great blunder after just queen d7, just stepping aside. Queen takes e7. Knight e2. Again, with the plan of castling queen side. And notice how black is just keeping white off balance, right? His development, white's development is all, disorganized, right? Like pieces are just everywhere. The queen's on f3. The knight is blocking the light square bishop. Then you got the dark square bishop on c3. Then you got a pawn, pawn on h4. You know what happened to this idea, right? It just stalled, right? The strong principal play of Vachier Lagrave just stalled that idea. He doesn't have time to do h4, h5, rip open the king side. He doesn't have time for the old sack mate, the old Bobby Fischer formula, right? Because before you can do that, you have to be developed properly. So he was trying to initiate this scheme without developing. So I appreciate that Vachier Lagrave met this play in strong fashion. Knight c6, just continuing on with development. Bishop takes g7. King takes g7. Castles. So now, surely, white is okay now, right? No, that would be wrong. His development is still, a work in progress. His pieces are terrible. Queen e5. Threatening mate. Okay, that's utilizing the initiative. Queen c3, and now we can see into Andreikin's head right now, is that now he's eager to calm the game down, so to speak. All right. But, at first he was, in attack mode, but now you can see he wants to calm the game down, and he's up a pawn here. So remember that black gave up a pawn for the initiative, right? To gain time, to gain a lead in development. This is something that you have to remember, that when you give up, material for time and lead in development, you have to utilize the time, or your opponent will just simply catch up in development, and then you'll still be down material. You won't have any compensation whatsoever. So you gotta play, you gotta play really aggressive. I didn't want to use that word because I don't mean aggressive move, but you want to play like really strong moves that basically keep the fire burning in your position. Because if Vachier Lagrave just simply goes into an ending just to pawn down, then he's basically going to be lost. So what he has to do here is find a way to continue keeping white off balance and attacking white in this position. So let's see what his next move was here. Knight d4. So he eliminates the trade of queens by putting a piece in the middle. Knight takes d4. Of course, Andreikin wants to get to the endgame now. C takes d4, but now there's another tempi right there. So now the queen has to move. So that's a move that white has to make that he doesn't want to make. He'd rather do something more constructive, but black has the initiative, so he's pushing white around a bit. Queen goes back to f3. And now d3 with the same threat again. And what I like about this move is it serves more than one purpose. Of course, it threatens, one move checkmate, but it cuts the bishop off again, hindering the development of white. Right, the bishop needs to come out, but it can't. C3. So again, a move that white does not want to do. This gives black time. And now h5 is played. And the idea behind this is not to stop this pawn from advancing to h5. Vachier Lagrave could care less. He's not playing defensive, but he's threatening to win the exchange. Bishop takes d3. Bishop g4. Andreikin decides that he should give up the exchange in order to catch up in development. So here, my friends, is the compensation transferring itself into another advantage. So at first, here was the imbalance in the position. White had an extra pawn, but black, in exchange for that extra pawn, was ahead in development and had the initiative and more active. Okay, now we fast forward a few moves, and now black cashes in that extra time, right? The initiative that he had for the pawn for the exchange. So now he no longer has this big lead in development and stuff that he had, but he has a material advantage now in form of an exchange. Queen takes b7. Rook a b8. Again, free development. Notice how he's willing to part with that pawn too. Queen a6. And now bishop takes d1. So notice the transfer of advantages here. So now it's a bishop and rook versus the two rooks. And white also has two pawns. So of course, this strategy again is for black is to keep the heavy pieces on the board. If you were to even take the queens off the board, maybe the queens off the board, black might have difficulty holding this because of that 4-1 majority on the queen side is a killer. So black has to keep the pieces on the board, the rooks and the queens. I would try to keep the queens and rooks on the board and play for attacking chances, because as long as those pieces are on the board, white can never really move those pawns in front of the king because of the attacking avenues that will open up for black. So black's strategy is to win by attack here, all right, at this point, or win enough material where he can win, in another way via endgame or something. Basically, win the material back. So it's an interesting imbalance in the position. Yes, black is up to exchange, but down 2 pawns. So the dynamic possibilities in the middle game rest with black here. Okay, white's strategy is to try to trade down, right? If he could get those queens off the board, queens, and if he could get off even one pair of rooks, and say it's just bishop versus rook, those pawns should be enough to win on the queen side. So we'll see how these things worked out. So rook takes d1, queen f4. So we see the attacking going on. Queen takes a7. So Vachier Lagrave parts with another pawn, because again, with what I just explained, if you understand that, you already know that you can't really, if you're black, you already know that all the end games without the heavy piece are probably lost. So what's an extra pawn? So Vachier Lagrave wants as much open files as possible. So with that pawn being captured, it just opens up the A file. It's a very dangerous situation. There it is. And again, rook takes a2. This is not necessarily about snatching pawns, but it's about getting to the king. This is how black has to win, is by attacking and either transferring those attacking chances into material gains that will offset white's lead in material. So now the black rook is penetrated into the second rank, which is good. Bishop b1 to drive him away, and the rook goes back. g3, queen to f3. Check. King g8. There's an offer of a trade of queens. Basically an offer that says, let me beat you right now by going into this end game with these 3 passed pawns on the queen side. Of course, Vachier Lagrave says no way, with the attack on the b pawn to boot. This forces him to advance, and this is again, this is like Andreikin building his own coffin, basically, or digging his own grave, because, as I said before, advancing those pawns in front of the king at this point is just basically suicide. Now, of course, he was provoked to advance them because the pawn was attacked, but those pawns are not going to be able. The king is not going to be able to survive without that pawn cover. Queen a6. Okay, this is brutal, threatening to get inside the castle. Queen to f3. There it is. Queen a3 check. King c2. Now rook a c8 by Maxime, threatening to snip off another pawn. g4, and now white tries to make some counterplay over on the king side. Yeah. And I think this is a good move by Lagrave here. Queen takes b4, and maybe a move like bishop a2, threatening here. And moves like that at some point give white some unnecessary counterplay, right? Letting white get his in, and of course I think black is still okay because of the exposed nature of the king here. But I think if you're trying to checkmate the opponent, if you can cut that stuff out, then you should. So rook c4 is played. Of course, white has to do something about the g pawn now. So he just simply attacks the rook right here, which this doesn't look right to me. And he just simply snatches off the pawn. So another pawn has fallen. So now we see the material deficit that black had is just slowly, slowly being diminished. And the king is in deep trouble because the king is about to be driven out into the open soon. Queen a2. And finally, white forces the exchange of queens. But now, the rook takes g4. Black is only down 1 pawn for the exchange. And then these 2 pawns are very flimsy. Takes the other one, and now we can say here that white is winning. The pawns are now even, and this is what I talk about exchanging different advantages. Because remember, I was saying the only way black can win is by basically mating the king or do some type of attack, which is true. That's if everything remained as it were. But what happens is, while you're attacking, if your attack is successful, the opponent is forced to make concessions, whether it's give back the material that was, basically the Greek gifts that were invested at the beginning of the attack. Remember earlier in the game, white was snipping off pawns. He took a 8-7, and he had this 4-1 majority of pawns on the queen side. But the due to the vigor of black's counterattack, he was forced to jettison some of that material. And now we see each side has 3 pawns. However, black still is up in exchange. So with everything else being equal, king safety is pretty much equal. We could maybe even give black a slight nod with the king safety. But everything else being equal, the pawns, black's pawns even better, right? White has 2 pawn islands. He has the one isolated pawn on the F file, and he has the 2 hanging pawns on the C and D file. So his pawns are better. He's up in exchange. The king safety is a wash. So black has played a brilliant game against an obscure, like kind of offbeat line. He played very energetically and shut Andreikin down in this game. So C4. White's last hope is to try to make some kind of queen again, trying to turn these 2 pawns into basically bones in black's throat, where he have to tie up his pieces or give up a piece to stop the pawns. Rook F4, just honing in on the weakness. D4. Again, this is all white has to hope for, is trying to get these pawns up the board. Check. And now that's basically all she wrote, because black can do the same thing with his pawns. So H4, C5, check, check. And not only delivering the checks, but taking control of the critical ranks so that the pawn can safely be escorted down the board. C6, H2, and now with the threat of rook here, and notice how Vachier Lagrave keeps an eye on this pawn. Nice move by Vachier Lagrave, forcing the bishop to give up itself. D5. White is in his last throws, hoping to again force black to give up one of his rooks to stop the pawns. Rook to C3. Rook B2. Rook D1 and Rook B5, King F8, King C7, King E7. This is a killer. This pawn can't advance. And Andreikin resigned. So I hope you enjoyed that game. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Just in conclusion, real quick, that game was very, very strong game by a noted Sicilian specialist in Vachier Lagrave. The faced with, and it should give you some inspiration. Sometimes we're faced with offbeat variations. You have your favorite openings. Say you play, I played the Dutch defense for several years, and I became annoyed with the Dutch defense because I played the Leningrad variation, and I would hardly get a mainline Leningrad. Somebody would play D4, I would play F5, and then I would always get these, people playing knight C3, people playing bishop G5, Staunton Gambit with E4, and so on and so forth. Always playing like these lesser variations. I get frustrated. But once I studied them and realized that they were lesser variations for a reason, and not the most popular variations for a reason, then I began to embrace and enjoy, um, the fact that players would play those variations against me, because once you get over that initial surprise value, then you realize that, okay, this line is slightly inferior to the main lines, and that let's do it. And that's how I felt watching this game today. Was that this B3 line is not as familiar. This B3 line is not is common. This is a main line, knight off, etc. But I like how Vachier Lagrave handled it. He just simply just grabbed the initiative, especially after H4. That was like that move right there was just displaying those aggressive intentions. So I'll see you on the next video.